Get out of my house, you gold-digging parasite, and take that bastard child with you." Those were the last words Victoria Harrington screamed at her daughter-in-law, throwing a glass of wine across the marble floor. She thought she had won. She thought she had finally purged the trash from her pristine family bloodline. But she didn't know that just 48 hours later, a black limousine would pull up to the estate, carrying a lawyer with a briefcase that would silence the Harrington dynasty forever. $500 million was on the table, and the person holding the keys to the kingdom wasn't who they thought. The invitation to the Harrington annual Midsummer Gala was printed on cardstock so thick it could double as a weapon. For Bella, holding it felt like holding a summons to her own execution. Bella adjusted the waistband of her maternity dress, wincing as the elastic dug into her swelling stomach. She was 7 months pregnant. Her ankles were the size of grapefruits, and she was currently standing in the bathroom of a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, trying to convince herself that she belonged in a mansion in the Hamptons. "Babe, are you ready?" James's voice came from the living room. He sounded tired. He always sounded tired lately. Bella looked at herself in the cracked mirror. She had bought the dress at a thrift store, a navy blue chiffon number that looked vaguely designer if you didn't look too closely at the hem. She had spent 3 hours steaming it. It still looked cheap. "Coming," she called back. James Harrington was the prodigal son who had committed the cardinal sin of falling in love with a waitress. When he married Bella 3 years ago, his mother Victoria had worn black to the wedding. His father Richard had spent the reception on a conference call. They had cut James off financially the day he signed the marriage license, forcing a boy raised on caviar to learn the price of milk. But tonight was different. Tonight, James had said they were finally going to try to make peace. For the baby. "You look beautiful," James said when she walked out, though his eyes lingered anxiously on her shoes. Sensible flats, not the Louboutins his mother favored. "Do you think she'll notice I'm not wearing the earrings she gave me?" Bella asked. James laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "She gave you those earrings for your birthday 2 years ago, Bella, and they were clip-ons from a gift shop at the airport. I don't think she cares." They drove to the Hamptons in their rusted 2014 Honda Civic. As they approached the wrought-iron gates of the Pines, the Harrington estate, Bella felt the familiar tightening in her chest. The house wasn't just a house. It was a fortress of old money, white pillars, and judgmental silence. The valet looked at their car with open disdain as James handed over the keys. "Careful with the clutch," James muttered, ignoring the man's sneer. Inside, the air was conditioned to a crisp 68 degrees and smelled of lilies and old money. A string quartet was playing somewhere in the distance. The room was filled with people holding champagne flutes, men in tuxedos, women in gowns that cost more than Bella's entire college education. "James." "There you are." The voice cut through the chatter like a knife. Victoria Harrington glided toward them. She was 60, but looked 45 thanks to a team of surgeons in Switzerland. She wore emerald silk that matched her eyes, cold and hard. "Mother," James said, stiffening. He placed a protective hand on Bella's back. "You remember, Bella?" Victoria's eyes flicked to Bella, then down to her stomach, then back up to her face. She didn't smile. "I see you're still expanding. I assume you've checked the dress code. We usually discourage tent wear at evening events." Bella felt the blood rush to her cheeks. "Hello, Victoria. Thank you for having us. We didn't have much of a choice, did we?" Victoria took a sip of her champagne. Richard insisted. Something about family unity looking good for the shareholders. Don't get used to it. "Mother, stop!" James warned, his voice low. "Oh, lighten up, James. Go find your father. He's in the library with the senator. He wants to introduce you." Victoria waved a hand dismissively at her son, effectively separating them. James hesitated, looking at Bella. "Go," Bella whispered, forcing a smile. "I'll be fine. I'll just get some water." As James walked away, Bella felt the isolation settle around her. She made her way to the buffet table, trying to make herself invisible. She reached for a glass of water, but a hand intercepted her. It was Ashley, James's younger sister. Ashley was 24, an influencer with 2 million followers and a personality made of aspartame and venom. "Oh my God, Bella!" Ashley shrieked, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. "Look at you! You're absolutely massive! Are you sure there's only one in there? Or maybe you've just been enjoying the free food a little too much?" A ripple of polite, cruel laughter went through the small circle of socialites surrounding Ashley. "Hi, Ashley," Bella said, pulling her hand back. "Just one baby. A boy." "A boy," Ashley repeated, wrinkling her nose. "Great. Another heir to the throne. Too bad he'll probably inherit your, background." "And what background is that?" Bella asked, her voice trembling slightly. "You know," Ashley whispered loud enough for the group to hear. "Poverty, desperation, bad teeth." Bella instinctively touched her mouth. Her teeth were fine, but the insult hit its mark. She felt tears pricking her eyes and turned to leave, but she bumped straight into a tall, imposing figure. It was Richard Harrington, the patriarch. He looked down at her, his face unreadable. Beside him stood a man Bella didn't recognize. A younger man, perhaps 30, with slicked-back hair and a suit that fit too perfectly. "Watch where you're going," Richard snapped. "I'm so sorry, Richard," Bella stammered. Richard brushed invisible dust off his lapel. "This is Charles Kensington," Richard said, gesturing to the man beside him. "The son of the CEO of Kensington Oil. Charles, this is James's wife." He didn't use her name. Charles looked her up and down with a predatory smirk. "Charmed. James has eclectic taste." "Charles and Ashley are getting engaged tonight," Richard announced loudly, ensuring the room heard. "A merger of 2 great families." Applause broke out. Bella stood frozen. No one had told them. James didn't know. And Richard continued, his voice booming. "In light of this union, I will be announcing changes to the family trust. We need to ensure the Harrington legacy remains pure." He looked directly at Bella when he said the word pure. Bella felt a wave of nausea. She needed to sit down. She scanned the room for a chair, but every seat seemed taken. She felt a sharp kick from the baby, followed by a cramp that made her gasp. "Are you okay?" a waiter whispered, noticing her distress. "I just need to sit," Bella wheezed. She stumbled toward a velvet love seat in the corner, but before she could sit, Victoria appeared again. "Not there," Victoria hissed. "That is an antique Louis XIV. I just had it reupholstered. I don't need your fluids ruining the fabric." "Victoria, I don't feel well," Bella said, gripping the back of the sofa. "Then go to the servants' quarters in the back," Victoria said, pointing a manicured finger toward the kitchen. "Or better yet, go to your car. You're making a scene." "I think I need a doctor," Bella whispered, the room spinning. "You need attention." "That's what you need," Victoria scoffed. "Always the victim. James isn't here to save you, honey. He's in the library, realizing that he gave up a kingdom for a peasant. Now move." Bella tried to take a step, but her legs gave way. She collapsed onto the expensive Persian rug. The music stopped. The room went silent. "Oh, for God's sake!" Victoria shouted, looking down at Bella with pure disgust. "Someone get this trash off my floor before the senator sees." Bella looked up through blurred vision. She saw the faces of the people around her, the wealthy, the elite, the family she had tried so hard to please. They weren't concerned. They were annoyed. And then everything went black. Bella woke up to the smell of antiseptic and the rhythmic beeping of a machine. She wasn't in the Hamptons anymore. The peeling paint on the ceiling told her she was in a public hospital, likely the closest one to the estate that accepted Medicaid. "Bella." James was sitting in a plastic chair next to the bed, his head in his hands. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His tuxedo shirt was unbuttoned, his tie gone. "The baby," Bella croaked, panic seizing her chest. She grabbed her stomach. It was still round, but different. "He's okay," James said quickly, grabbing her hand. "He's in the NICU. It was a placental abruption, Bella, induced by stress. They had to do an emergency C-section." Bella let out a sob of relief, followed immediately by a wave of fury. "Your mother?" James looked away. "I know." "She wouldn't let me sit down, James. She told me to go to the servants' quarters." "I know," James repeated, his voice cracking. "I confronted her after the ambulance left." "And?" James was silent for a long moment. "She told me that if I went with you, I was done. For good this time. No inheritance, no trust fund, no access to the family properties. She said if I walked out those doors, I was dead to them." Bella squeezed his hand. "But you're here." "I'm here," James said, tears streaming down his face. "I chose you. I chose us. But Bella, we have nothing. The hospital bill alone, the NICU stay. I don't know how we're going to pay for this." Just then the door to the hospital room opened. Bella expected a doctor. Instead, a man in a trench coat walked in. He was older, perhaps in his 70s, with a face that looked like it was carved from granite and eyes that had seen everything. He held a battered leather briefcase. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington?" the man asked. His voice was gravelly but kind. "Yes," James said, standing up protectively. "Who are you?" "We didn't order any services. We can't pay you." The man smiled slightly. "I'm not here to collect a bill, son. My name is Austin Pym. I'm an attorney." "We don't need an attorney," James said, "unless you're suing us." "I'm a specific kind of attorney," Austin said, placing his briefcase on the bedside table. "I specialize in dormant estates and lineage verification." "Lineage verification?" Bella asked, trying to sit up. "What does that mean?" Austin looked at Bella. He studied her face for a long time, as if comparing it to a memory. "Bella," Austin said softly, "what do you know about your grandfather?" Bella frowned. "My grandfather? He died before I was born. My dad said he was a coal miner in Pennsylvania. He left when my dad was a kid." Austin nodded slowly. "That's the story your father was told. That's the story everyone was told. It was necessary for his protection." "Protection from what?" Bella asked. Austin clicked the latches on his briefcase. The sound echoed in the small room. He pulled out a thick file, yellowed with age, and a single modern tablet. "Your grandfather was not a coal miner, Bella. His name was Elias Thorne." "Does that name ring a bell?" James gasped. He dropped back into his chair. "Thorne, as in Thorne Industries. The steel magnate. The man who built half of Chicago." The very same, Austin said. Elias Thorne was one of the wealthiest men of the 20th century. He was also a man with many enemies. When his wife died, he feared for his only son. Your father, Bella. He sent him away to be raised by a foster family in Pennsylvania under a fake name to keep him safe from kidnapping threats. He intended to reveal the truth when your father turned 25. But he didn't, Bella whispered. No, Austin said. Elias died of a sudden heart attack 2 days before your father's 25th birthday. The records were sealed. The lawyers at the time, well, let's just say they were less than honest. They hid the lineage to control the trust themselves. Austin tapped the file. I have spent the last 30 years hunting down the truth. I finally found the birth certificates, the DNA markers, and the original will of Elias Thorne last week. He looked at Bella, his eyes twinkling. Bella, you are the sole living heir to the Thorne estate. The room went silent. The beeping of the monitor seemed to speed up. What? What does that mean? Bella asked, her voice barely audible. Austin opened the tablet and swiped to a bank account summary. He turned the screen toward them. The assets have been accruing interest for 40 years. Real estate stocks, bonds, and the original trust. Bella looked at the number on the screen. She blinked. She looked again. 532,000. 500 million, James whispered. 532, Austin corrected. Give or take a few thousand. Bella felt the room spinning again, but this time not from pain. Why now? She asked. Because, Austin said, my investigation triggered a notification to the current board of trustees. They know you exist now, and legally, everything belongs to you. But there is a complication. Of course there is, James muttered. The Harringtons, Austin said, his expression darkening. Specifically Richard Harrington. What does my father have to do with this? James asked. Austin pulled a document from the file. Your father Richard sits on the board of the shell company that has been managing the Thorne fortune illegally for the last decade. He has been siphoning money from your inheritance, Bella, to prop up the Harrington estate. They are broke. They have been broke for years. They've been living off your money. Bella's mouth fell open. The dress, the mansion, the insults about her poverty, the gold digger comments. They knew. Bella asked, her voice turning to ice. Richard knew, Austin said. He discovered your identity 3 years ago. Why do you think he was so opposed to the marriage? He wasn't afraid of a peasant entering the family. He was afraid you would find out he was stealing from you. If you married James, you'd be close. Too close. A fire ignited in Bella's chest. It wasn't the soft warmth of hope. It was the scorching heat of vengeance. They humiliated me, Bella said quietly. They mocked my son. They almost killed us both. They did, Austin agreed. And tomorrow they are hosting a press conference to announce the merger with Kensington Oil. They need that merger to cover the holes in their accounts before the auditors come next month. Bella looked at James. James looked at the screen, then at his wife. His face hardened. He took Bella's hand, but this time his grip was different. It was the grip of a soldier preparing for war. Austin, Bella said, looking up at the lawyer. Does that money give me the power to buy things? My dear. Austin smiled. With that money you can buy God. I don't want to buy God, Bella said, a cold smile spreading across her face. I want to buy the Pines. And, James added, looking at his wife with newfound awe, I think we should attend that press conference. Austin Pym closed his briefcase. I'll have the car ready at noon. The next morning, the air in the hospital room felt different. It was no longer the stale atmosphere of despair. It was charged with the electric hum of retribution. Bella stood by the incubator in the NICU, her hand resting gently on the plastic. Inside her son, whom they had named Leo because he was going to need the heart of a lion to survive this family, slept soundly hooked up to monitors that hummed a steady rhythm. "He's strong," Austin Pym said, appearing beside her. He had traded his trench coat for a sharp, charcoal three-piece suit that screamed authority, just like his great-grandfather. "He has to be," Bella whispered. She turned to the lawyer. "Is everything ready?" "More than ready," Austin replied. He handed her a tablet. "While you were sleeping, my team at Pym, Sterling and Associates did a deep dive into the Harrington financials. It's worse than we thought." James walked up behind Bella, looking over her shoulder. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the documents. "My God," James muttered, "they're not just broke. They're underwater. Heavily." "Correct," Austin said. "Your father, Richard, has been playing a shell game. He moved assets from the Thorn Trust Bella's money into the Harrington accounts to show liquidity. He used that fake liquidity to secure loans from the Kensington Bank." "Kensington?" Bella asked. "As in Charles Kensington Ashley's fiancée?" "The very same." Austin nodded. "The merger isn't just a marriage. It's a bailout. If Ashley marries Charles, the Kensington family absorbs the Harrington debt. Richard gets off scot-free, and the theft of your inheritance is buried forever under corporate synergy." "So they're selling Ashley," James said, his voice flat, "to cover up a crime." "Essentially," Austin said. "But here is the coup de grace. The loans Richard took out. They have a clause, a change of control provision. If the source of the collateral, meaning the Thorn Trust, is proven to be fraudulent or claimed by the rightful owner, the loans are called in immediately, in full." Bella looked at the numbers. The debt on the Pines alone was $20 million. The total debt was close to 80. "So if I claim my money," Bella started. "The Harrington Empire collapses instantly," Austin finished. "They lose the house. They lose the company. They lose everything. And since Richard signed personal guarantees, he could face prison time for fraud." James walked to the window looking out at the parking lot where their rusted Honda sat. He stayed silent for a long time. Bella watched him, her heart tight. This was his father, his mother, his sister. "James," she asked softly, "if this is too much, if you want to walk away, take the money and just leave them alone. I'll do it. We can go to Europe. We never have to see them again." James turned around. His eyes were red, but his jaw was set like stone. "They threw you on the floor, Bella. They mocked our son while he was fighting for his life in here. They treated you like garbage because they thought you were weak." He walked over and kissed her forehead. "I don't want to go to Europe. I want to go to the press conference." Austin Pym smiled a shark-like grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Excellent. I've taken the liberty of arranging transport. Your Honda, well, let's just say it won't fit the image we're projecting today." "One more thing," Bella said, looking down at her hospital gown. "I can't wear this." Austin snapped his fingers. The door opened, and a woman walked in, carrying several garment bags. "This is Coco. She's the best stylist in Manhattan. We have 2 hours before the press conference begins at the Pines. Let's make them count." An hour later, Bella looked in the mirror. The transformation was startling. The exhausted, terrified girl from the night before was gone. In her place stood a woman who looked like she owned the building. She wore a structured white power suit that cost more than the Harringtons' car. It was sharp, modern, and intimidating. Her hair, usually pulled back in a messy bun, was blown out in sleek chestnut waves. She wore simple diamond studs, real ones this time. James stepped out of the bathroom in a bespoke navy suit that Austin had seemingly conjured out of thin air. He looked like the prince he was born to be, but with a hardness in his eyes that his mother had never put there. "Ready?" James asked, offering his arm. Bella took a deep breath. She thought of Victoria screaming at her to go to the servants' quarters. She thought of Ashley laughing at her poverty. She thought of Richard stealing her grandfather's legacy. "Let's go get my house back," Bella said. The lawn of the Pines was transformed into a media circus. White tents were erected. Catering staff moved like ants carrying silver trays of hors d'oeuvres, and cameras from every major news network were set up facing a podium adorned with the Harrington and Kensington crests. Victoria Harrington was in her element. She stood by the podium holding a glass of champagne, basking in the attention. She wore a red dress that screamed dominance. Beside her, Ashley was posing for photographers, her arm looped through Charles Kensington's. Charles looked bored, checking his watch every 30 seconds. Richard Harrington stood a few feet away, sweating despite the mild weather. He was talking to a group of investors, his laugh a little too loud, his handshake a little too firm. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria's voice rang out over the microphone, silencing the crowd. "If we could all gather around, we have a momentous announcement." The crowd shuffled forward. Reporters raised their cameras. "Today marks a historic union," Victoria began, her voice dripping with practiced charm. "My daughter Ashley and Charles Kensington are not only joining their hearts in matrimony, but joining our two great family legacies. This merger will create a powerhouse of industry that will dominate the East Coast for generations." Ashley beamed, flashing a ring the size of a skating rink. "I'm just so happy," she chirped into the mic. "Charles and I are soulmates." And Richard stepped up, taking the mic. "This union ensures financial stability and growth. The Harrington Group has never been stronger." "Liar," a voice whispered in the back, though no one heard it yet. "We are entering a new era of prosperity," Richard shouted, raising his fist. Suddenly the low thrum of engines drowned out the applause. Heads turned toward the main gate. The heavy iron gates, which were currently closed to keep out the riffraff, began to swing open. "Who is that?" Victoria snapped at a security guard. "I said no more guests." A convoy of 4 black Escalades rolled up the long driveway, kicking up dust. They didn't stop at the valet. They drove straight onto the pristine lawn, crushing the manicured petunias Victoria prized so dearly. The crowd gasped and parted. The vehicles came to a halt in a semicircle right in front of the podium. "What is the meaning of this?" Richard demanded, stepping down from the stage. "Security. Get them out of here." The door of the lead car opened. First, a polished black shoe hit the grass. Then Austin Pym stepped out, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked at Richard and smiled. "Richard," Austin said calmly. "Long time no see." Richard's face went pale. "Pym, you died? Or retired? What are you doing here?" "I was busy," Austin said. "Digging." Then the rear door opened. James stepped out. The crowd murmured. The prodigal son had returned. Victoria marched forward, her face twisting in rage. "James, how dare you show your face here after last night? And look at you. Did you steal a suit? Get out before I have you arrested for trespassing." James didn't speak. He simply turned and offered a hand to the person inside the car. Bella emerged. A hush fell over the lawn. She didn't look like the pregnant girl in the thrift store dress anymore. She looked like a queen coming to execute a traitor. She stood tall, smoothing her white jacket, and locked eyes with Victoria. "Hello, Victoria," Bella said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "You," Victoria sputtered. "You brought her the charity case." Ashley laughed nervously into the microphone, which was still on. "Oh my God! Did you guys come to beg for leftovers?" Bella ignored Ashley. She walked straight past Victoria, past Richard, and up the stairs to the podium. James stood right beside her, his arms crossed. Austin Pym flanked them, placing his briefcase on the lectern right on top of Richard's speech notes. "Excuse me," Victoria shrieked, rushing up the stairs. "Get away from the microphone. This is a private event." Bella leaned into the mic. "It is a private event," Bella said, her voice booming across the estate and into the live news feeds. "But you're hosting it at the wrong house." "What are you talking about, you lunatic?" Richard hissed, trying to grab the mic. James intercepted him, shoving his father back with a single firm hand to the chest. "Don't touch her," James growled. Bella looked at the crowd. She saw the confusion, the curiosity. "My name is Bella Thorne Harrington," she announced. A ripple of shock went through the older members of the crowd. The name Thorne meant something. "Thorne," Richard whispered, his legs trembling. How? How do you know that name?" "My grandfather was Elias Thorne," Bella continued, her eyes pinned on Richard. "And for the last 30 years, the Harrington family has been stealing from his estate to fund their lifestyle. This house, the champagne you're drinking, the ring on Ashley's finger. It was all bought with my money." "Lies!" Victoria screamed. "She's delusional postpartum psychosis. Get her off the stage." "Austin," Bella said calmly. Austin Pym opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. He handed one to the nearest reporter, then another to Charles Kensington. "These are bank records," Austin announced, "showing illegal transfers from the Thorne Trust to the Harrington personal accounts authorized by Richard Harrington. Total amount embezzled $50 million. Charles Kensington scanned the paper. His smug expression vanished. He looked at Richard. "Richard, is this true? You said the liquidity came from overseas investors." It's a misunderstanding," Richard stammered, sweat pouring down his face. "Bookkeeping errors, Charles, we can explain. And this," Austin continued, holding up a sleek black folder, "is the foreclosure notice." "Foreclosure?" Victoria gasped. "We own this house." "Actually," Austin corrected, "you owned the debt on this house, debt that was secured by the Thorne Trust. As of 9:00 a.m. this morning, Bella has reclaimed her assets, which means the collateral is gone. The bank has called the loan. Since you cannot pay." Austin turned to Bella. "Mrs. Harrington has purchased the debt," Austin said. "She is now the owner of the Pines." The silence was absolute. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Bella took a step toward Victoria. She didn't scream. She didn't throw wine. She spoke with a terrifying calm. "Victoria," Bella said, "get out of my house." You can't do this," Victoria whispered, tears of rage and fear welling in her eyes. "I have lived here for 30 years. I am a Harrington, and I am a mother," Bella said. "A mother you tried to break. You told me to go to the servants' quarters. You told me I was trash. Well, the trash just bought you out." Bella turned to the security guards who were standing unsure of what to do. "Gentlemen," Bella said, "these people are trespassing. Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Harrington and Ashley off the property immediately." "Wait," Ashley cried, grabbing Charles's arm. "Charles, do something, buy the house, pay her off." Charles Kensington looked at Ashley, then at the documents in his hand. He looked at the cameras broadcasting the Harrington humiliation to the world. He slowly peeled Ashley's hand off his arm. "I think not," Charles said coldly. "The Kensington brand cannot be associated with fraud. The engagement is off." Ashley screamed as Charles walked away toward his own car. "Richard!" Victoria grabbed her husband's lapels. "Fix this. Do something." But Richard was slumped against the podium, hyperventilating. He knew what was coming next. It wasn't just eviction. It was the FBI. "Escort them out," Bella repeated. Two burly guards, realizing who signed their paychecks, now stepped forward. One took Victoria by the elbow. "Don't touch me!" Victoria shrieked, flailing. "I am the lady of this house. You can't do this to me." "Actually, ma'am," the guard said, "you're making a scene." Bella watched as the family that had tormented her was dragged across the lawn, past the ruined flower beds, and toward the gate. Victoria was screaming, Ashley was sobbing on the ground, and Richard looked like a dead man walking. James stood beside her, his hand gripping hers. "Are you okay?" he asked. Bella looked out at the estate. It was beautiful, and for the first time it didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a fortress for her son. "I will be," Bella said. "But we're not done yet." "We're not?" James asked. "No," Bella said, watching the police cars turn into the driveway lights flashing. "That was just the eviction. Now comes the justice." The Blue Horizon Motel was a far cry from the Pines. The neon sign outside flickered with an ominous buzz, the O in Horizon burnt out. Inside room 104, the air conditioner rattled like a dying engine struggling to cool the cramped space that smelled faintly of stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner. Victoria Harrington sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress, staring at a stain on the beige carpet. She was still wearing the red dress from the press conference, though it was now wrinkled and stained with mud from when she had tripped near the gate. "Room service isn't answering," she muttered, tapping the receiver of the greasy landline phone. "There is no room service, Victoria," Richard snapped. He was pacing the small room, his tie undone, his face a mask of grey exhaustion. "It's a motel. You get ice from a bucket down the hall." "I refuse to get my own ice," Victoria hissed. "This is temporary. Just a clerical error. The lawyers will fix it by morning." "The lawyers?" Richard laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Which lawyers, Victoria?" "The family firm dropped us 2 hours ago. They don't represent indigent clients facing federal fraud charges. We are toxic, radioactive." Ashley was sitting in the corner, scrolling furiously on her phone. Her mascara was running down her cheeks. "My engagement is trending," she said, her voice trembling. "But not the good kind. Hat Gold Digger is trending with my face. And Hat Harrington fraud. Charles blocked me on everything, even LinkedIn. Who blocks someone on LinkedIn?" "Put the phone away," Richard commanded. "We need to think." "We need to sue her," Victoria said, standing up. Her eyes had a manic glint. "She humiliated us. That little waitress stole our home. We sue for emotional distress. We sue for defamation." "She has $500 million, Victoria," Richard shouted, stopping his pacing to glare at his wife. "She can bury us in paperwork for the next century. We have nothing. My accounts are frozen. The credit cards are declined. I have $40 in my wallet." A heavy silence fell over the room. The reality of their situation began to sink in. They weren't just poor. They were destitute. "We have one card left to play," Richard said quietly, his eyes narrowing. "What?" Victoria asked. "The baby," Richard said. "James's son. The heir." "That bastard child." Victoria wrinkled her nose. "What good is he? He is the direct bloodline to the Thorne fortune." Richard explained, his mind working fast, twisting logic to suit his desperation. "Bella is unfit. She has a history of financial instability. We can paint her as mentally unstable. The stress of the pregnancy, the sudden wealth, we can argue she's suffering from delusions. If we get custody of the child, we control the trust that benefits the child. You want to steal her baby?" Ashley looked up horrified. "Dad, that's evil, even for you." "It's survival." Richard slammed his hand on the cheap laminate dresser. "Do you want to live in this motel for the rest of your life?" "Ashley, do you want to work at a diner? Because that is your future, unless we get leverage. We don't need to keep the brat. We just need custody long enough to force a settlement, a payout to go away." Victoria's expression shifted. The disgust was replaced by a cold calculation. She did look unhinged on that stage, shouting about grandfathers and conspiracies. We could find a doctor, an old friend, to testify to her instability. "Exactly," Richard said. "We hit them where it hurts. We file for emergency custody tomorrow morning. Grandparents' rights. Concern for the welfare of the infant." Ashley looked at her parents. She saw the greed in their eyes, the absolute lack of remorse. She looked down at her phone again. A text message notification popped up from an unknown number. "I know what they're planning. Don't go down with the ship, Ash." She stared at the screen. She didn't reply. But for the first time in her life, Ashley Harrington realized that family loyalty might just be a suicide pact. Meanwhile, at the Pines, the atmosphere was surreal. Bella walked through the grand hallway, her footsteps echoing on the marble. The staff, the ones who hadn't fled with the Harringtons, were looking at her with a mixture of fear and awe. "Mrs. Harrington," the head housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, asked tentatively, "shall we remove the portraits?" Bella looked up at the massive oil painting of Richard and Victoria hanging over the fireplace. In the painting, they looked regal, untouchable. "Burn them," Bella said. Then she paused. "No, that's bad for the environment. Put them in the basement, facing the wall." "Yes, Mom." James walked in from the terrace. He had a glass of whiskey in his hand, but he wasn't drinking it. He was just holding it, staring at the amber liquid. "Are you okay?" Bella asked, placing a hand on his arm. "I just watched the news," James said. "They're calling it the Hamptons Massacre. Everyone is talking about the money. No one is talking about the years of abuse, the gaslighting." "We know the truth," Bella said. "That's what matters." "My father called me," James said quietly. Bella stiffened. "When?" 10 minutes ago. From a payphone, I think." "What did he say?" James took a sip of the whiskey, grimacing as it went down. "He said he was sorry. He said they were desperate. He asked for money. Just enough to get a lawyer for the fraud case. And I told him that he had a lawyer," James said, his voice hardening. "He has the public defender, just like any other criminal." Bella exhaled a tension she didn't know she was holding, releasing from her shoulders. "I'm proud of you." Don't be, James said darkly. He didn't just ask for money, Bella. When I said no, he changed. He laughed. He said, enjoy the baby while you can. The courts favor the established family, not the lottery winners. Bella felt a chill run down her spine. What does that mean? It means, Austin Pym's voice came from the doorway, that they are going to try to take Leo. Austin walked into the room, holding a fresh stack of papers. My contacts at the courthouse just alerted me. Richard Harrington has filed an emergency ex parte motion for temporary custody of Leo Harrington. They are alleging that you, Bella, are suffering from acute postpartum psychosis and are a danger to the child. That's insane, Bella whispered. I've never— It doesn't matter if it's true, Austin said grimly. It only matters if they can convince a judge to sign a temporary order. Richard still has friends in high places, judges he's played golf with for 20 years. If they sign that order, Child Protective Services will come to take Leo until a hearing can be held. Bella's maternal instinct flared into a blinding white heat. They are not touching my son. Then we need to be ready, Austin said. The hearing is at 9:00 a.m., and it's going to be a bloodbath. The courtroom was packed. It wasn't a criminal trial, but the press had swarmed the family court building, hungry for the next chapter of the Harrington saga. Bella sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. James sat beside her, looking like he wanted to punch someone. Austin Pym sat on the end, calm and immovable as a mountain. On the other side sat Richard and Victoria. They had cleaned up. Richard was wearing an old suit, likely the only one he had left, but he wore it with arrogance. Victoria was dressed in a modest grey suit, looking the picture of the concerned, grieving grandmother. They had managed to hire a lawyer, a man named Silas Vane, known for his cheap billboards and aggressive tactics. All rise, the bailiff announced. Judge Beverly O'Connor swept in. She was a stern woman, with a reputation for zero tolerance for nonsense, but Bella knew she was also a regular at the Harringtons' charity galas. We are here on the matter of the emergency custody of Leo Harrington, Judge O'Connor said, peering over her glasses. Mr. Vane, you may proceed. Silas Vane stood up, buttoning his jacket. Your Honor, this is a tragedy. My clients, Richard and Victoria Harrington, are pillars of this community. They have been forcibly ejected from their home by a woman who has come into a sudden, inexplicable fortune. Since that event, the mother, Bella Harrington, has exhibited erratic, manic behavior. She has publicly threatened her in-laws' destroyed property, and we have witness testimony suggesting she has neglected the infant's medical needs. Objection, Austin Pym boomed, not even standing up. Fabrication. Sustained on the neglect unless you have proof, Mr. Vane, the judge said. We do, Vane smiled. I call Dr. Eris Thorne to the stand. Bella froze. Thorne? Who is that? A man walked in. He looked respectable, wearing a white coat. Dr. Thorne is a distant cousin of the deceased Elias Thorne, Vane explained, and a licensed psychiatrist. The doctor took the stand and proceeded to weave a narrative of genetic mental illness in the Thorne family line, claiming that Bella's sudden aggression at the press conference was a textbook symptom of a hereditary break from reality. It was all lies, pseudoscience, mixed with half-truths. Richard watched from his table, a smug smile playing on his lips. He leaned over to Victoria. It's working. O'Connor looks concerned. Your Honor, Vane concluded, we are simply asking for temporary custody to ensure the child is safe while the mother undergoes a psychiatric evaluation. My clients are willing to care for their grandson in this difficult time. Judge O'Connor looked at Bella. Mr. Pym, Do you have a response? Austin. Pym stood up slowly. He picked up a single USB drive. Your Honor, before we address the fictional medical diagnosis from a doctor who lost his license in Ohio 3 years ago, yes, we checked Dr. Thorne. I would like to submit a piece of evidence regarding the character of the petitioners. Is this relevant to the child's safety? The judge asked. It is relevant to the petitioner's motivation, Austin said. It was sent to my office at 3:00 a.m. this morning. Richard frowned. He looked at Victoria. Victoria shrugged. Play it, the judge ordered. Austin plugged the drive into the court's AV system. A voice filled the courtroom. It was unmistakably Richard Harrington's voice. The audio was grainy, recorded in a room with an echoing acoustic like a cheap motel. Recording Richard. We don't need to keep the brat. We just need custody long enough to force a settlement. A payout to go away. Victoria. She did look unhinged. We could find a doctor to testify. Richard. It's survival. Do you want to work at a diner? We hit them where it hurts. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Richard's face went the color of ash. Victoria gasped, covering her mouth. Judge O'Connor's face turned a shade of red that matched the fiery temper she was known for. She looked from the speaker to Richard Harrington. Mr. Harrington, the judge said, her voice dangerously low, did you conspire to commit perjury and defraud this court in order to extort money from your daughter-in-law? Richard stammered, standing up. Your Honor, that is a deep fake AI. It's not real. Austin Pym turned to the back of the courtroom. Perhaps the person who recorded it can verify its authenticity. The doors opened. Ashley Harrington walked in. She wasn't wearing designer clothes. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater. She walked past her parents without looking at them. Ashley, Victoria whispered. Traitor. Ashley took the stand. Ms. Harrington, the judge asked, did you record this conversation? I did, Ashley said, her voice shaking but clear. Last night, room 104 of the Blue Horizon Motel. Why? The judge asked. Ashley looked at Bella, then at James. Tears filled her eyes. Because they're monsters, Ashley said. They don't love Leo. They don't love James. They don't even love me. They only love the money. And I'm tired of being part of the lie. Bella is a good mother. My father is a thief. That's enough, Richard screamed, lunging toward the witness stand. You ungrateful little bailiff, the judge shouted. 2 officers tackled Richard Harrington before he could reach his daughter. He was pinned to the floor, shouting obscenities. Mr. Vane, Judge O'Connor said, looking at the Harrington's lawyer with disgust. I am dismissing this motion with prejudice. I am also issuing an immediate restraining order against Richard and Victoria Harrington for Bella James and the child, and I am recommending the district attorney look into charges of conspiracy and perjury. She banged her gavel so hard the sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Get them out of my sight! As the bailiffs hauled a struggling Richard and a sobbing Victoria out of the courtroom, Bella stood up. She walked over to the witness stand. Ashley was trembling. She looked up at Bella, expecting anger, expecting vengeance. I'm sorry, Ashley whispered. I'm so sorry for everything I said. Bella looked at the girl who had mocked her poverty just 2 days ago. She saw a broken child raised by wolves. Thank you, Ashley, Bella said softly. I have nowhere to go, Ashley admitted, wiping her nose. They'll kill me if I go back to the motel. Bella looked at James. James nodded. You can't stay at the Pines, Bella said firmly. I'm not ready for that. But she pulled a checkbook from her bag, the new one, with Thorne Estate printed on the top. She quickly wrote a check and handed it to Ashley. Get an apartment, get a job, start over. Find out who you are when you aren't a Harrington. Ashley looked at the check. It was for $50,000. Enough to start, but not enough to retire. It was a lifeline, not a handout. Thank you, Ashley sobbed. Bella turned to James and Austin. Let's go home. I have a baby to feed. As they walked down the courthouse steps, the flashing lights of the cameras didn't blind Bella anymore. They felt like the spotlight on a new act. The villains had been vanquished, the dragon slain. But as she got into the car, Bella looked back at the courthouse. She knew that money changed people. It had destroyed Richard and Victoria. She squeezed James's hand. Promise me something, she said. Anything, James replied. Promise me we never forget what it was like to drive that Honda Civic. James smiled, kissing her knuckles. I promise. But the story wasn't quite over. Because $500 million doesn't just buy a house. It attracts the rest of the world. And Austin Pym had one last file in his briefcase he hadn't shown them yet. 3 months had passed since the trial. The Pines no longer felt like a cold museum of pretension. The scent of lilies and judgment had been replaced by the smell of roasting garlic and fresh bread. Bella sat in the library feeding Leo, who was now a chubby, happy baby, oblivious to the fact that he was the heir to $500 million. Mr. Pym is here, the butler announced. Austin walked in, looking older and slower than before. He wasn't carrying his trademark briefcase. Instead, he held a small, weathered wooden box. James joined them, rolling up his sleeves, looking more relaxed than he had in years. I can't stay long, Austin said, taking a seat. My work is done. The transition is complete. Richard and Victoria are currently in a studio apartment in New Jersey awaiting trial for fraud. Ashley is in Chicago, quietly enrolling in nursing school. You are secure. You're retiring, Bella asked. Something like that? Austin smiled wistfully. But before I go, I owe you the truth about why it took so long for me to find you. Bella frowned. What do you mean? I didn't just find you last week, Bella. Austin confessed, placing the box on the coffee table. I found you 5 years ago. The room went silent. Bella felt a chill. 5 years I was waiting tables. My father was dying in a hospice facility. We had nothing. You watched us suffer and did nothing. I watched you survive, Austin corrected softly. He opened the box to reveal an old, handwritten letter preserved under glass. Your grandfather, Elias Thorne, was a brilliant man, but he was cynical. He believed unearned wealth destroyed the soul. He saw what money did to his peers, how it turned their children into vultures just like the Harringtons. Austin tapped the glass. The trust had a character clause. Elias stipulated that the heir could only be revealed if they proved they could maintain their dignity without the money. He wanted an heir who knew the value of $1 because they had to sweat for it. Bella looked at the jagged handwriting of the grandfather she never knew. I watched you work double shifts to pay for your father's care without complaint, Austin continued. I watched you, James, choose love over your inheritance. You passed a test you didn't know you were taking. If I had given you the money 5 years ago, Richard might have manipulated it out of you. But the Bella of today, She crushed him. Austin stood up, looking like a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. My debt to Elias is paid. I'm going fishing. He tipped his head to them and walked out the door, disappearing into the afternoon sun. Bella looked at James. They were surrounded by millions of dollars in art and land, but the fear was gone. He was right, Bella whispered. The money didn't save us. We saved ourselves. James kissed her hand. So, Mrs. Harrington, what do we do with the rest of our lives? Bella looked out the window at the estate that was finally truly theirs. First, she smiled. We start a scholarship fund for single mothers, and then we take the Honda Civic for a drive. Wow, what a journey. From the heartbreaking humiliation at the gala to that incredibly satisfying courtroom showdown, Bella and James proved that true class has nothing to do with your bank account and everything to do with your character. It's a powerful reminder that while money can buy a mansion, it can't buy loyalty, love, or dignity. The Harringtons learned the hard way that when you treat people like trash, eventually you get taken out with the garbage. I want to know what you think. Do you agree with Elias Thorne's character clause? Do you think it was fair to let Bella struggle for 5 years to prove she was worthy of the fortune, or should Austin have stepped in sooner? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who loves a good drama and subscribe with the notification bell turned on so you never miss our next story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.